Hi, I'm Jim. I'm an artist here in Folkestone. In 2020, I've been dedicating a bunch of my time to research and development of future projects. One of the ways I've been recording that research is through a podcast called Mind Milk Theory. I thought I'd share an episode with you via this video. It'll be like a listening party of sorts, except I'm pre-recorded. I've also very recently been exploring drawing again, which isn't really a strength of mine, but it does help me think. It does help me to develop new ideas. So for the visual portion of this video, I'm going to make a sketch based on what is discussed in the podcast. And you can follow the process along. At the end, I'll discuss the drawing a little and explain its relationship to what you'll hear. Perhaps, if you'd like, you might want to get your own paper or sketchbook and doodle along with me. I know that's one of the ways I like to spend time when listening to podcasts. Anyway, anytime I make a drawing, I like to start with a thumbnail sketch. And so I figured to make a tiny drawing, I needed tiny art supplies. So I have a choice of 2 tiny sketchbooks and 2 tiny paint sets. These are minuscule. Well, I think I'll have to go with the cactus and the lion. I won't even try to use this paintbrush though. Yikes. Well, as I get started on my thumbnail, I guess it's time I play in the podcast audio. Enjoy.
Hello listener, and welcome to Mind Milk Theory, an arts podcast. I remain your host, sometimes contemporary artist, Jim Lockie. We've had a short hiatus in this series on Beowulf, but I'm looking forward to getting to today's episode because it's about Kennings. A kenning is a particular form of compound word which combines 2 ideas to describe a person, animal or object. Kennings in Old English serve a role similar to simile. Take 2 nouns and smash them together to create a new compound which describes yet a third noun. The result you get at the other end is adjective-like because it describes something, but it also functions in the place of that noun. It's a smadjective. It's a kenning. The word kenning comes from the Old Norse verb athkenna, which means to describe or to understand, and could be thought of as a tightly compacted metaphor or even a micro-riddle. More descriptive than using the direct word, but more efficient than a prosaic description, kennings litter Old English poetry, perhaps, I think, in part, because they allow for striking imagery within the strict metre of Anglo-Saxon verse. Kennings allowed poets to speak about people, creatures or objects without naming them directly, and perhaps surprise the audience with unlikely associations and cipher-like tight word formulations that once decoded paint their meaning more vividly than if the poet had just spoken plainly. Sometimes the poet might say mind's worth, a kenning meaning honour, and the audience would get a more direct and clear idea of what honour meant for the poet. Other times a poet might use kennings to increase the visceral feel of an intense scene, as she describes a battle as a sword storm, the blood as battle sweat, death as sword sleep, and a corpse as a raven's harvest. Finally, the poet might use the indirectness of a kenning to play on ambiguity. For instance, in Beowulf, the first monster, Grendel, is described as a crime ravager. But does that mean that his ravaging of the Danes is a crime? Or is he ravaging them for their crimes? This deepens the subtle ambiguity in Grendel's characterization. One of my favourite kennings in Beowulf appears at the end of the poem as Beowulf lays on the funeral pyre and his body is burned. We get this line: Flames wrought havoc in the hot bone house, burning it to the core. Bone house here, meaning Beowulf's body, and perhaps more specifically, the house-like cage of his chest cavity as the flames consume him to the very heart. It is the evocative clarity of Kennings that give the direct address of the Beowulf poem its power, its ability to produce images so completely and efficiently through these little compound phrases. Though not completely dead, the Kenning has lost out in popularity to more expanded forms of description. Phrases like ankle biter, bean counter and pencil pusher are sometimes put forward as examples of modern Kennings, but bite, count, push, these are all verbs. A Kenning is a compound made of two nouns. A couch potato or arm candy are more appropriate examples. The idea of a lazy and lethargic person emerges in the middle of that Venn diagram of couch and potato. What separates Old English Kennings from their modern counterparts, however, is their frequency and the imagination employed in creating them. So maybe we should see it as a challenge to start making more original Kennings of our own, to find the poetry that emerges from the combination of unlikely references to describe our world as we find it. For instance, if you wanted to describe the product of thought or sustenance for new ideas, you could use the Kenning mind milk. Hey, that's the name of the show! Thanks for listening, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review if you liked it. I'll be wrapping up this series on Beowulf soon and hope to be getting to some more interviews with interesting, great and creative people. The music used on this episode is by Prod Riddiman. You can find him on the internet. Oh, and before I go, if you've got a link in the description of this episode, I have made an illustration based on another Beowulf Kenning, Whale Road, which refers to the sea. There's a video to go with it too, so be sure to check it out. Take care. I like you. Bye.
Here's my finished piece. If you didn't catch it, this image is based on a Kenning from Beowulf, Whale Road, meaning the sea. I decided to make a little Scandinavian style ship atop a whale's back so as to give that sense of a journey. Though the execution could take some work, I'm pleased with it overall. By the way, my son came to paint with me while I made this image, and he designed this brilliant monster with poisonous spikes, so I couldn't help but copy it. Thank you for watching. I hope that you get a chance this Christmas to chill out and draw. And if you're interested in hearing more of my nerdy thoughts on art, Old English poetry, or whatever else I'm researching, you can find my podcast on iTunes or Spotify. It's called Mind Milk Theory, and it's free. Be safe, be well, be kind, and support your local makers, why not? Bye.